What's going on, everyone? Hope you're doing well. Hopefully, it was all right when I wasn't here yesterday with the sub. My son's home. He's sick. He tested positive for the flu, but school's making him go home. Good news is, I think he's home until after the holidays, so it's good for me. All right, so yesterday, things weren't going well, right? At least flowers for Algernon. Things weren't going well. We got to the part where Algernon bit one of the trainers. And so that's kind of like foreshadowing, right? Like, if Algernon, if they've been kind of tied together, like Algernon does well, Charlie's doing well. Now the opposite's happening. And so Charlie figured it's probably only a matter of time for me. All right, so let's get into this. And at any point, of course, shoot a hand up. We'll stop this. We'll go about 15 minutes or so. Share it right there. You can see it. Make me small. We ended, the last thing we read was suddenly time has become very important to me. May 29th. I've been given a lab of my own and permission to go ahead with the research. I'm on to something. Working day and night. I've had a cot moved into the lab. Most of my writing time is spent on the notes, which I keep in a separate folder. But from time to time, I feel it necessary to put down my moods and my thoughts out of sheer habit. I find the calculus of intelligence to be a fascinating study. Here is the place for the application of all the knowledge I've acquired. In a sense, it's a problem I've been concerned with all my life. I mean, I don't think Charlie, when we first met him, was concerned with too many problems. He seemed pretty happy, to be honest. Oblivious, maybe, to how other people treated him. I don't know if that's good or bad, but obviously he was taken advantage of, but he was happy. I think he was happier than he is now. Dr. Strauss thinks I'm working too hard. Dr. Namor says I'm trying to cram a lifetime of research and thought into a few weeks. I know I should rest, but I'm driven on by something inside that won't let me stop. I've got to find the reason for the sharp regression in Algernon. I've got to know if and when it will happen to me. Regression, remember that? That was one of our words. It's like almost the opposite of progression. If somebody is progressing really well, they're getting better. If they're regressing, they're getting worse. Regressing is the verb, regression is the noun, not aggression or aggressive. They sound alike. I don't know if they're related in any way. Maybe related in some way. Aggression, regression, progression. All right, moving on. June 4th. This letter. Okay, this is going to be very difficult for me to read. And if you don't understand whole parts of this, well, maybe it's okay. Not the worst thing ever. All right, June 4th. Letter to Dr. Strauss. Dear Dr. Strauss, under a separate cover, I'm sending you a copy of my report entitled The Algernon-Gordon Effect, a study of structure and function of increased intelligence, which I would like to have you read and have published. As you see, my experiments are completed. I've always included my reports and all my formulae, as well as mathematical analysis in the appendix. Of course, these should be verified. Because of its importance to both you and Dr. Namor, and need I say myself too, I've checked and rechecked my results a dozen times in the hope of finding an error. I'm sorry to say the results must stand. Yet, for the sake of science, I'm grateful for the little bit that I here add to the knowledge and of the function of the human mind and the laws governing the artificial increase of human intelligence. I recall your once saying to me that an experimental failure or the disproving of a theory was as important to the advancement of learning as success would be. All right, so stopping. I mean, it is. Anybody have? We just stop right there. Make it bigger. Can anybody put that into like normal words right there? I won't reread it, but basically, I think it's saying mistakes are helpful. You have to make mistakes to realize, what you're doing wrong so you can do something better. Yeah, mistakes are super important. They do like trigger the brain so that you don't do it again. Yeah. So, I mean, you don't want the mistakes to be like harming people or anything, but okay, I forgot my laptop. No, I forgot my charger. I think it was a couple weeks ago. I don't know, back in November, and yeah, I was like really mad at myself, and I just like every morning now, I just make sure I don't forget my charger. Like I make sure it's in my bag beforehand or whatever. So that's just one example, but I think mistakes can be super helpful, which is why. How about this? I'm just say it from a parent's point of view. Okay. Um, so let's say one of my kids forget their lunch, right? They don't bring their lunch from home or whatever. I mean, that's a mistake, right? Now, if it's possible, I could go home, grab their lunch for them, and they're going to have lunch, right? But I also think, like, as a parent, like, I'm not, even if I can, I'm not going to go home and get your lunch. Well, why? Because you're less likely to make that mistake again if you have to suffer the consequences. Like you'll try to remember it better the next time. So instead of like me running over to school, 6, 7 times in a year, like we just let that one, you get like maybe a crappy lunch from school or whatever, and then you're less likely to repeat that same mistake. So I'm just hoping that like learn from your mistakes. I mean, it's a hard, I don't know, maybe just because I was late to mature or whatever, but it took me a long time to realize like, okay, mistakes aren't all bad. Now, repeating the same mistake over and over, well, it's a different thing. But every once in a while, mistakes aren't the worst thing in the world. So that's what he's saying. Like maybe I have to be a test subject. Maybe I'm going to be a failure. But in the grand scheme of things, maybe this is going to be good for humanity. What's the other thing? You got to break a few eggs to make an omelet or something like that. We got a bunch of sayings like that, but it's just like, you know, not the worst thing in the world. Unfortunately for Charlie, it might be, but all right. I know how that this is true. I'm sorry, however, that my own contribution to the field must rest upon the ashes of the work of two men I regard so highly. So he's changed his tune. I don't think he liked them a little while ago when we last read, and he seems to like them now, or at least respect them. June 5th. I must not become emotional. The facts and the results of my experiments are clear, and the more sensational aspects of my own rapid climb cannot obscure the fact that the tripling of intelligence by the surgical technique developed by Dr. Strauss and Namor must be viewed as having little or no practical applicability at the present time to the increase of human intelligence. So he's basically saying at this time, like it just doesn't seem practical. It doesn't seem realistic that this is going to be any help at this time. As I review the records and data on Algernon, I see that although he is still in his physical infancy, so as far as his body, he's not quite mature, he has regressed mentally. Motor activity is impaired. So your motor activity is how well you use your hands, your legs, your limbs, basically. And there's a general reduction. Just trying to make sure I get these all right. Of granular activity. There's an accelerated loss of coordination. Glandular. Sorry, glandular. Granular. Yeah, we don't need to get bogged down in this. This is almost like a scientific paper, but on a granular level, it's like a really small level. But they're talking about like glands, more medical. Just let me know if you care. I can explain that further, but I'd rather move on, right? Just so this isn't too boring here. There are also strong indications of progressive amnesia. So it looks like he's forgetting things. As will be seen by my report, these and other physical and mental deterioration syndromes can be predicted with statistically significant results by the application of my formula. The surgical stimulus to which we were both subjected has resulted in an intensification and acceleration of all mental processes. The unforeseen development, which I have taken hang on, we should pause here. Very troubled look on his face. Charlie, months into the experiment. Hey, he's dressing nicely, though. Got a suit on. You don't see that very often. Liberty of calling the Algernon-Gordon effect is the logical extension of the entire intelligence speedup. The hypothesis here proven may be described simply in the following terms. So I think this is pretty important for us. Artificially increased intelligence deteriorates at a rate of time directly proportional to the quantity of the increase. So I guess it's that old thing, like what goes up must come down, basically. If you speed up very quickly, the opposite's going to happen eventually. You will deteriorate very quickly. I feel that this in itself is an important discovery. As long as I'm able to write, I will continue to record my thoughts in these progress reports. It is one of my few pleasures. However, by all indications, my own mental deterioration will be very rapid. I've already begun to notice signs of emotional instability and forgetfulness, first symptoms of the burnout. June 10th, deterioration progressing. I become absent-minded. Algernon died 2 days ago. All right, so if this is Algernon's condition and Charlie's condition are kind of like mirroring each other, only a couple weeks apart, Charlie might not be long for this world. Uh-oh, poor Charlie. All right. Is that dissection shows? My predictions were right. His brain had decreased in weight, and there was a general smoothing out of cerebral convulsions, as well as deepening and broadening of brain fissures. Right, very scientific there. Remember, I'm an English teacher. Okay, moving on. I guess the same thing is or will soon be happening to me. Now that it's definite, I don't want it to happen. I put Algernon's body in a cheese box and buried him in the backyard. I cried. June 15th. Dr. Strauss came to see me again. I went open the door, and I told him to go away. I want to be left by myself. I've become touchy, irritable. I feel the darkness closing in. I keep telling myself how important this introspective, that's almost like one of our words, right? Is it? We've had that one already before, right? Introspection, looking inside yourself, remembering, I guess those mistakes, things like that. Man, when I went to school for teaching, they said, after each day when you're teaching, you should spend some time being introspective. Like just, okay, how'd the day go? How did you do? What could you have done differently? I think that's good advice to everybody. So he's definitely kind of like going inside his own mind right now with this journal. Introspective journal will be. It's a strange sensation to pick up a book that you've read and enjoyed just a few months ago and discover that you don't remember it. I remembered how great I thought John Milton was, but when I picked up Paradise Lost, I couldn't understand it at all. I got so angry, I threw the book across the room. I've got to try to hold on to some of it, some of the things I've learned. Oh, God, please don't take it all away. All right, just what English teachers do here. The author could have had Charlie pick up any book, but he actually picks up a book called Paradise Lost. I'll just pause it here. Why might the author have had Charlie pick up that book? All right. You don't even have to have read that book. I had to read it or parts of it in college. Not easy. It's written a lot like Shakespeare. It's poetry. But Paradise Lost. Like if Paradise is something perfect, he's losing what he once had. And Paradise Lost is a poem about like the Adam and Eve thing that we were talking about earlier. So that's been mentioned a couple times. That lady that used to work with him compared what he was doing to the whole Adam and Eve thing, like eating from the tree, gaining knowledge, bad things happening to you. All right. Enough for today. That's about 15 minutes. All right. I don't know. Probably not the most enjoyable reading, right? I know it was very tough for me. I'm not sure if this was my best reading ever. It's very difficult. But long story short, things aren't looking good for Charlie. All right. Hang on. There are a couple things available, or maybe one thing. The JECT quiz is available for anybody who wants it. I hopefully have either passed back all the study guides that have been turned into me, or I will. And then you can have some time to start, maybe finish. Yeah, I got to finish the eject quiz. Remember, there's no like saving it. Let me know if this has happened recently. Like you don't get a chance to finish, you hit submit, whichever ones you don't answer, you're going to get wrong. Just let me know. It's like 6 out of 11, whatever. That's not normal, for some people. All right. I'm rambling. Let's do it.